Start the recording now. Okay, so I'm Marina Hanganu. I'm the artistic director of the project. I'm a theater director and an art researcher specializing in digital performance and in particular in telematic performance. I represent the project coordinator, Ciprian Theater in Buzău, Romania, and I am joined by project partners Industria Scenica in Vimodrone, Milan, Italy. Allow me to introduce my colleagues, Isnaba Miranda, Paola, Cagna, and Ermanno Nardi, who form the project management team in Italy. And we have a special guest today, Fiorella Operto from Scuola di Robotica in Italy. And Fiorella has been involved in the very first stages of this project, and she's one of the pioneers of robotics, as you will find today. Thank you very much, Fiorella, for accepting our invitation. And I also say hi to Bianca Trifan, who is a member of our project team, and we wrote the theater play together, and we'll discuss about it today. Okay, so the order of events is the following. I will give a brief presentation of the project. Then Fiorella will hold the presentation, and I will continue with an overview of telematic theater as a broader artistic category. So at the end, you will be able to ask any questions about any of the presentations. Okay, so sharing the screen. Okay, let me choose the presentation, this one. I hope you can see the presentation. Okay, so Tele-Encounters Beyond the Human is a project co-funded by the Creative Europe program of the European Union. It started in 2020 and will end in August this year. So it's coordinated by the Ciprian Theater in Buzău, in Romania, and it's implemented in partnership with Industria Scenica in Italy and the Catholic University of Murcia, UCAM, in Spain. And it's actually a continuation of a previous project called Tele-Encounters, which was also co-funded by Creative Europe. So Tele-Encounters explored the theme of migration from the perspective of parents who live abroad and leave their children behind. The current project also looks at migration, but from a different perspective. So this time we are exploring the relationship between left behind adults and their elderly parents in Romania. And as you can see from recent statistics, Italy is actually the main destination country for Romanian migrants, and Romanians form the largest immigrant group in Italy. So that's why I think it was a very good decision to do a telematic performance between Romania and Italy, as you will see. And another question is that of who will take care of these elderly people who are left behind. And I think this question goes beyond migration because the median age continues to increase all over the EU. So who will actually take care of us when we will grow old? So there's a whole field of technology exploring how robots and ambient assisted living could help elderly people cope with the problems of old age and maybe also keep them company. However, this has a lot of ethical implications, and I think Fiorella will tell you more about it. So the main project results are one telematic theater performance, a 2032 smart family, and a website with artificial intelligence and virtual characters called Imaginary Robots. The theater play is based on the sociological research conducted in the project, namely on 26 interviews with migrants and left behind elderly parents in Romania. And you can find all the transcriptions in Romanian and in English on the project website. So we took inspiration from the interviews when writing the theater play, but there's also another big source of inspiration that has to do with the collective imagining of social robots. So in 2021, we held 6 creative workshops and brainstorming sessions for children and adults in all the 3 countries involved in the project. And the team that coordinated these projects was multidisciplinary. We had theater directors, visual artists, roboticists, and ethicists. working with people in introductory sessions to familiarize them with robots and their ethical implications. And then we ask them to imagine their ideal social robot. What should a robot look like? What should its functions be? How should it behave? What sort of relationship should it establish with humans? And we ended up with over 90 robot characters. Thematic connection between the participants' creations and the performance and the virtual robots websites. They were just inspiration sources. Okay, so the first activity, it's a telematic performance because it takes place simultaneously in Romania and in Italy. And the two countries, the two performance spaces are linked in real time via video conferencing. And we have film-like credits. There was a huge team that worked on this performance. I co-directed it with Camilla Brison from Italy, and I co-wrote the play with Bianca Trifan. And there's a huge team in both countries. And I think it's better for you to see the trailer of the performance.
A fost ceva neașteptat.
Avrei detto che fosse già abituata, con tutti i robot che trovi nei negozi, ristoranti, aeroporti, stazioni, hotel, teatri, parchi, incroci, uffici, sportelli, fabbriche, ospedali. Ma è chiaro che non avrebbe mai immaginato di avere un robot a casa sua.
Cum îl cheamă? Ocmios.
Capisco la reazione di Laura.
Și o să-l accepte.
Nemmeno io mi affiderei alle mani di un
O
robot.
să-l accepte în moare de ales. După un infart, insuficiență cardiacă cronică.
Noi in Italia.
Da sola, con un robot?
Ocmios.
Dar poate veniți voi în vizită cât de curând, nu?
Okay, so I won't go into much detail because the work process will be covered in the second webinar, but it's useful for you to know from the start that this robot doesn't have artificial intelligence. So it's actually a robotic puppet controlled wirelessly by actress Miranda Gabudan. You can see part of the mechanisms used for the control of the robot, but more in the next webinar. And we had 10 performances in total, and that's quite a long performance run for a telematic performance of this size, because it's very hard to produce and to sustain. We were very happy that it got selected in two important festivals, the National Theatre Festival in Romania and in Milano Digital Week in Italy. You can actually watch the full performance for free on YouTube, either the Romanian version or the Italian version. Both are available online. And the second activity was the Imaginary Robots platform. You can actually play with the virtual characters. There are 6 robots that can interact with users, actually virtual robots, not physical robots, of course, just characters that can interact with the users via the famous GPT-3 algorithm. So they can reply unpredictably to users. Again, film-like credits. The UCAM University was the producer of this platform. And again, a trailer would be very useful for you to understand what it's all about. are virtual characters, and they can communicate in spoken English. We tried to make them communicate in other languages as well, but we encountered major problems with the language filter of these bots. And the linguistic models, of course, are GPT-3 is a pre-trained model, but the actual bots were further trained on texts written by participants in the workshops, and an original Q&A that I wrote for them, and some open access materials that are relevant to the main topic allotted to each bot. And we are now in the dissemination phase of the project. We are going to launch a book that contains 4 academic studies. One is dedicated to the analysis of interviews. One is a study about the human perception of social robots as reflected in the workshops, a study about the interaction with the bots that you have just seen, and an analysis of the audience response to the performance. And we will also hold the stage workshops, a workshop on the 13th of May, and we invite you in either Romania or Italy to come and play with the robot if you are an actor or a puppeteer, and to explore telepresence with remote partners. And in June, we will hold an international symposium at the National University of Theatre and Film in Bucharest, and also online, that will cover all the topics of the project, and we will disseminate the research conducted in the project. Thank you very much. Okay, now Paola.
Thank you, Marina, for the project presentation. As Marina said, my name is Paola, and I'm the project assistant for the Italian partner, Industria Scenica. I'm here to present Fiorella Operto. She was our key reference for exploring the robotics, as she was one of, I think, a founder of this discipline. She helped us with the initial project training, our training as project team, and then her organization, Scuola di Robotica, helped us with the robotic workshops that Marina mentioned before. Especially we thanks the Scuola di Robotica for this contribution. Fiorella was educated in philosophy. She worked in Italy, but also abroad. She mainly started her career as a disseminator, scientific disseminator. In 2000, together with her team, she co-founded the Scuola di Robotica. The pure translation is a robotic school. It's an organization that mainly works with the robotics and more to promote the use of robotics in schools, with the universities, and also in private and public institutions. In 2004, she launched the idea of robotics together with Gianmarco Verruccio. That means that they tried successfully to apply the ethical principle to the robotic science. Nowadays, Fiorella has received various awards and acknowledgement, and she's very active in promoting, together with the Scuola di Robotica, she promotes robotics among kids, teenagers, and especially girls. So I would say welcome to Fiorella, and thanks for your contribution.
I wasn't. Thank you, Paola. Thank you, dear friends and colleagues, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you. Also because, not only because I followed the development of your project, and also because your project is important to simulate the real relationship between humans and robots. And in fact, theater, that it's traditional theater and virtual or digital theater, is so important that we, as School of Robotics, we had been used the theater of the oppressed, the theater forum, in a project aimed to temper the cyberbullying, because showing the effects of cyberbullying with theatrical sketches was so important for kids that they really were shocked, looking how, you know, these sketches mimicked, simulated the effects of a bad use of digital media. Shall we use now my PowerPoint? So it's easier to go on. Who is opening? I think.
Yes, Marina
okay.
is sharing
Marina,
the screen.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, Paola, thank you for your presentation. In fact, in 2002, with Gianmarco Verugio, we launched the idea of roboethics, but you're right, it was in 2004 with the first International Symposium on Roboethics held in Sanremo at Villa Nobel that roboethics became known. And now it is a meter for assessment the health, ethical, legal, and societal issues of many European and world projects. So now roboethics is not anymore a wish, it's becoming an evaluation meter, an evaluation kind of measure. Next slide. I thought to start the health, ethical, legal, and societal issues in robotics with a view of the same issues, the same topics in artificial intelligence, and first of all, in our own way of looking at the world and our proximal humans. We call these health issues in terms of perception and way of relationship, stereotypes or biases. Now, stereotypes are, let's say, shortcuts, are mental associations that are embedded in the way we interpret and use reality and also create reality. And stereotypes, as Woody Allen would say, are bad but quite useful. So stereotypes could be bad, but sometimes could be true. And in fact, the shortcuts are important for our mind functioning because they are the way in which our memory works and our quick thinking works. By stereotypes, we can learn easily and quickly about role, competencies, measures, and we can forecast, foresee future action. So in a sense, they are important, and we cannot say that stereotypes are all bad. No, they also are part of our functioning. Next slide. Now, stereotypes become dangerous when these are applied without processing, without thinking to them, without thinking about their birth and effect, and especially in complicated, complex human relationships. Now, as I said, stereotypes and biases come from our human evolution, and probably they helped us to survive. You have stereotypes and biases of affinity, that is a tendency to favor people who are similar to us. Probably in ancient times, this bias, this stereotype, helped human beings to survive. Knowing rapidly, becoming acquainted rapidly with their tribe and getting kids, being acquired with the elements of the tribes to be sure to survive, to be able to detect friends from enemies, foe and friends. Perception biases are the tendencies to form stereotypes, again, as a sub-product of the affinity bias according to group of people. gender bias, age, tribe, culture, religion. And again, all these stereotypes come from ancient time when we had to decide quickly about action and quick action to decide whether or not open our heart or be friendly to some kind of people or to enemy or hostile or escape from other people. Now all these biases, all these stereotypes are full of pain, hostility, and suffering. They come from epochs and eons where we were as humans so under pressure and so in danger that every quick decision for the bad or for the good had to be taken. All these biases now are part of our culture and, badly enough, are part of our internet. Because as Umberto Eco would say, libraries and internet, as the word libraries, are full of fakes, news and mistakes, because we threw in the libraries in paper, but also libraries in digital world, all our suffering as human beings and our mistakes. So you see this picture, it's a picture of, how full of stereotypes we are and how unconsciously we are using unintended bias are used in every second of our life, every second. Next slide. Now, according to neurosciences, every second we receive million, really, if not billion, of information that are processed unintendedly, unconsciously. Every kind of information coming from our sensing apparatus, but also from our emotional apparatus. And our brain mind process this information without us being conscious of it. Now, unintended biases come from the past, and we are filling our artificial intelligence and our robots with all these stereotypes. As you will see. Now, the worst problem is that robots endowed with deep learning mode functioning they decide, quote unquote, by it themselves what kind of decision based on all the patterns we are feeling embodied in their intelligence. These patterns, of course, are full of our culture, our elements, and full of our stereotypes. So that means that AI could reinforce human biases. It's a huge problem that will be tackled and solved more and more as roboethics or artificial ethics will become one of the main elements to transform unintended biases in processed biases. For example, facial recognition algorithms that are one of the main area of investigation for robots and for AI. For robots, it's a vision capability. For AI, it's the capability of platforms to detect and select facial from billion of facials, and also for platforms to invent and create new facial shapes from nothing or simply from billion of patterns. Now, an AI or a robot could be trained to recognize easily from billion of persons a person on the basis of the pattern we embodied in them. And a robot or an artificial intelligence could be trained to recognize these faces, you know, from billion of faces. Now, if we, as human, as developer, as engineer and programmers, if we give a tag, special tag to these faces, we can train our artificial intelligence and robot to use the stereotypes by which we tagged these faces and discriminate or use these stereotypes for the bad. This is important because all the stereotypes about gender, tribe, Black people, elderly people, women, kids, animals are part of our culture. And if this is not conceived as an issue, it will be simply transferred and imagined with the computational power of our processor today. It becomes an unintended bias forever. And it will be propagated forever. Next slide. Some examples of unintended bias. We say unintended, and we hope so. We hope that it were unintended, although some people have some doubts about the unintended, will. In some years ago, an engineer saw this picture on your right, and on the bottom, you see two Black people, and one of the, thank you, and the male was a friend of him. So the engineer realized that Google was using this picture, and the tag was gorillas. Happily enough, they were friends. So the engineer immediately called Google, told the programmer that was a stereotype. But again, it took some years for Google to eliminate, to cancel this picture, because they simply decide not to intervene on the tag, but simply canceling this picture. Now this picture is not anymore there, and the problem was solved. But for years, this picture was one of the, let's say, picture used in recognition, in face recognition for how many million of artificial intelligences, ubiquitous intelligence, and all over the world. Another example, it is in the next slide, but I will tell you about. During COVID, come back to the previous slide. During COVID, it's up. Up, you see this hand, the white hand with the thermometer, digital thermometer, and you see on your left, Black people with the same thermometers. Okay, again, this is a very famous stereotype and horrible bias. The white hand with the thermometer was tagged as human using a digital thermometer to test the fever in the case of COVID. But if the man, if the human was black and the man was black, it was tagged as a pistol, as a gun. You know, a black man with a thermometer was tagged as a gun, a man with a gun. There are how many racial and biases pictures are there on Google? Think to the use of women in publicity, ads, etc. How will we be able to free internet from all these pictures, not thinking about the black internet? Because, you know, they say the white internet is a little surface. What it's really, you know, the wide and huge amount of information in black internet used by criminals, mafia, and every ugly action. Another bias we discovered in American health system. In this case, the statistics showed, the medical health system statistics showed that Black people were less willing to spend money in their health. So the statistics indicated that the Black people were not interested in their health. That was done using the money Black people used in the health system compared to white people. Of course, if you use these parameters, the natural, let's say, conclusion is that Black people do not want to be healthy, because of course they spend less money simply because Black people in the United States are poorer. But the conclusion was that they do not want to spend. So the general health system was, in America, was set according to this judgment. And again, it was a conclusion by a processing of information using or either wrong data or simply imperfect data. Because the problem of processing data is not that they are wrong, maybe they are right, simply imperfect, and what selection is used. Now, of course, it is a bias. If I would say to a WASP that Black people do not want to be healthy because they spend less money, WASP is white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, usually a bit racist, do not quote me, but there is a general tendency by WASP to conclude that Black people, they do not want to be healthy, you know. And again, in depicting CEO as a male, especially in the Anglo-Saxon world, you know, putting images of white male with the tie and you know, usual suit as a CEO, they reinforce the stereotype that a CEO is a WASP white male, especially with the tie and suit, etc., etc. And more you use these stereotypes in the culture, it is stressed, this image, the stereotypes of a CEO. If you ask people, how do they imagine a manager, very seldom they would tell you that it's a very nice and good-looking woman. Good-looking woman is associated to, you know, the blondie character in the United States. The blondie character is a goose, less intelligent and like sometimes stupid girl, very, very good-looking. But again, is a stereotype quite dummy. And again, it's again reinforced. So every time that people is looking for a CEO for hiring, for jobs hiring, etc., they are looking for a male because, you know, internet is reinforcing, in this case, a stereotype. And again, another one is Amazon hiring algorithm. It is another famous case that, again, because people tend to call male assistant for Amazon and receive indication more from male assistants than women, than girl and women, the hiring process for Amazon decided more on the side of males than on girls and women, precisely because they accepted the cliques, you know, the customer's decision about especially electronics, machines, etc., etc., etc. The case of the Apple credit card is also famous. It became famous because in the same family with the same income, you know, Apple credit card gave more credit to the male than to the wife, and that was quite an outstanding stereotype. Next slide. Again, biases reflect the way in which society is structured, and we use this culture to train our data, our artificial intelligences, and our computers. And again, it could be that developers use their personal bias, you know, for to train the AI or a robot, or environmental data. About environmental data, I already gave you some examples, especially in the Anglo-Saxon words, not because other culture has less biases, simply because Anglo-Saxon words do more on internet. Personal biases are the ones a developer confers, transmits to the robot and its artificial intelligence. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, okay. Now the question is, how can we free our culture and, of course, our network from biases? And what is a bias in robotics? As often developers say, garbage in, garbage out. You know, as more garbage you put in your computer, more garbage you will get, and less garbage you will get. Could robots be biased? For sure. Robotics not only accepts and is affected, you know, by stereotypes of our society, but in terms of ethical, legal, and societal issues, we have also other considerations that belong to the general topic of dependability. Now, dependability is the general concern about safety, security, and the capability of a machine, of a robot, to be compliant with the user. It's a general area quite known to engineers, and every machine we use now are like CE, like it's the monogram of the European Commission certificate of dependability. And in terms of robots, also safety, security, and compliance with ethical issues. As I said, roboethics is one of the measures for the dependability and roboethics of the robots. If you think to what I just said about the bias and stereotypes in artificial intelligence, imagine bias and artificial and stereotypes in a robot where not only the damages could be very heavy, but could be also quite dangerous, because these robots will behave and will perform according to its capability to learn, but also to deep learning. What is deep learning? It's a capability of a neural networks or artificial neural networks to take decisions on the basis of something that it learned. And it learned from not only all the patterns we put in, but also some kind of selection process based on what pattern. Now, we call it pattern, but we can call it stereotypes. You know, stereotypes is not always bad. You know, stereotypes are pattern of knowledge. Now, can you imagine a robot that is designed to assist an elderly, but a robot that cannot select, cannot detect the culture of the person to be assisted. You know, you see here in this picture white people, you know, but the robot could assist people from Asia, from Africa, and from different also European culture. And in fact, there was a European project called Caresses, where we were in touch with, that tried to design the intelligence of a robot and the behavior of a robot independently from the culture, or at least that the robot could understand the culture of the person to be assisted. And the culture involved in this process were from Asia, was a Japanese lady, from United States, and from Europe. To be able to free a robot from biases, we should be able to understand as precisely as much more precisely as possible not only the function of the robot, the functioning of his artificial intelligence, and the way in which humans are related to robots. Next slide. As I said, dependability is a global topic area for freeing artificial intelligence and robots from biases. Now, what is important is to understand the process by which we are filling our machines with stereotypes. This is the process by which a robot would be freed from stereotypes. And you see that every time it's a question of real life setting. Not always developers and engineers have the time and money and possibility to test in real setting. Most of the times they test on simulation. And simulation is also a good channel for bias and stereotypes. So testing in real life setting is important, as for us every time to free our mind from bias, please think thoroughly to a real setting, not a general abstract human being, that kid, that woman, that animal, that planet. Okay? And so you will immediately get more questions that's really important about, I mean, what is it really so? Did I count all the possibilities? How many stereotypes I am conveying to this abstraction? The other process, very important, is called the counterfactual. Counterfactual is the logical step when you ask yourself, okay, this is so and so, but what happens if this is different? And you put many lines of counterfactual possibilities. So you become aware of the fact that, again, reality is not simulation, that no simulation can really cover all the reality possibilities. Considering always human in the loop, human should be, as in the picture, always in the loop. So again, no abstraction, think a human, again, which human, that human, how old, a woman, a kid, etc. Very important is to rethink, as we just did in this half an hour, how science and technology are taught from the ground, how science and technology are taught in university. Is ethics a part of university curriculum and program in engineering? Not at all. And in general, improve people education in science and technology with the dissemination activities you just did. Next slide. Okay. Very shortly, to give you an example, I taught to, let's say, 500, 400, 500 kids in middle school in Genova about, cyberbullying. And I used to work on the, let's say, Kantian priorities, the general pattern of Kant, time, space, and ego, by which, according to philosopher Kant, we understand and we know the world. And we discussed about the fact that using digital media to communicate and have communication with the mates, it changes time because the acceleration is incredible. Time because every message can be forever. And these kids were really appalled, really shocked, forever. I said, yes, forever. No, but it's only in my smartphone. No, it's not in your smartphone. It's on the cloud. Oh, space, because, the distance are erased, and content. What kind of content can be communicated with the machine? So by this, I am ending, I'm closing, concluding my presentation, hoping that it was useful to you and for the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiorella, for your contribution. I think it was very useful. It seems very far from the theater and artistic world, but actually is many of the points that you make actually came out during the production of the Telematic performance that we did last year. And actually, I think it's actually very important your last message that digital is real and the network is a physical network. What we decide to convene as a message through our project or performance or any kind of text that we write using also artificial intelligence stays with us, and I think it represents also us, ourselves, and our bias and stereotypes. So we need to be very careful when we start using technologies in arts and in theater specifically. So now, welcome. I give the floor to Marina that will describe us in very details the Telematic performance.
Thank you very much, Fiorella, for the excellent presentation. Okay, now I'm going to switch to telematic theater, which is a type of performance that goes a long way back in time. It didn't start with our project. So actually my presentation will focus on the context of telematic theater internationally. Okay. So So I did my PhD in telematic theater. I finalized the thesis 1 year ago, and I published it in a book that proposes a theory for the construction process of telematic theater. And to my knowledge, at least, it's the only study that actually proposes such a theory, although there are many other short studies that deal with specific projects. So if you know of any other studies on the same topic, please do let me know, because I'm very interested. So I'm going to talk about my personal practice, about what telematic theater is, how we can define it, and what its characteristics are. I'm going to include it in a larger category, which I call expanded theater. I will offer a brief and incomplete history of the genre, and I will present some examples from Romania and also international producers of telematic theater. So these are my projects. I started working with telematics in 2015, and my first projects were very low tech and low budget, meaning that I worked with mobile phone connections, and only later on, when accessing European funds, was I able to do more high-tech productions, of course, alongside an amazing team from Romania, Spain, and Italy. Okay, so this is the first telematic performance I ever did, and it consisted of only one connection, only an audio connection, not even visual, between one performer who was exploring an interactive installation, an immersive installation, guided on the telephone by actress Marina Hanganu, who was playing a character who had emigrated to New York. And my next two performances connected participants from various places in the world.
Okay, just enough
stop the sound
to keep it going. Christmas stop there. Eventually, the sun will also die, and that will be the end of time, real and imaginary alike. So, in case we don't destroy the planet until then, the sun will be our death star.
Performance linking participants from London and the performer located in a different country, even on a different continent, such as Australia. And they had a tour through London that was pre-established, and they were guided on the phone by the performer, and they could see what the performer was seeing in his own or in her own city. And my next project was a telematic performance in education project, which also involved Bianca Trifan and Armine Vosganian, who were also part of the Smart Family team. And it was very similar in concept to the previous one that you saw.
Au început performanțurile propriu-zise, în a doua săptămână de lucru. Au fost 4 zile de performanțuri pentru fiecare dintre cele două perechi de oraș.
So the idea was that a team of children were moving through their city, presenting specific places that they had chosen previously to a group of children located in a classroom in a different city. So that's why it was called Telecity. Okay. And then the Planet of Lost Dreams. Just a second, because I can't see the controls for the videos. I don't know why. Okay. So the Planet of Lost Dreams was the first high-tech performance I worked on, and it connected Spain and Romania. Two theater studios linked in real time via video conferencing and Kinect-controlled animations that you can see in this clip. And actually, the story followed the lives of a family separated by migration. The child who had stayed behind with her father and also her mother who was in Spain. Okay. And then another type of telematic performance, Generation 200, which took place on Zoom and featured one single actress, Armine Vosganian, who was interacting with audience participants via Zoom in a futuristic setting. I think I have some internet connection problems, and that's why I can't control
For the sake of...
And then Smart Family, but you have already seen the trailer. Okay, so what is telematics? telematics is a word coined in 1978 in French, actually, Telematic. It describes the merge between telecommunications and informatics. And you can find various names that sometimes overlap, sometimes not, such as satellite arts, telecommunications arts, net art, cyberperformance, telepresence art. So I think the biggest difference is that some of them refer to specific technologies, such as cyberperformance. It refers to the internet, so only performances based on the internet. Network performance is a more broad category. Nevertheless, I use telematic because I think it's the most encompassing term, and telematic art was coined by a very important artist called Roy Ascott, and he was one of the pioneers of the field of telematic installations and telematic performance, not so much of telematic theater. So there are various kinds of telematic works. You can divide them into theater, dance, music, and installation art. However, some performances cannot easily be included in the category of performance art or theater. So I will discuss look at the characteristics of telematic performance in general. So as you have seen from the previous examples, the action of such a performance takes place simultaneously in at least two distinct spaces, which can be physical or virtual. They are always connected via telecommunications technologies. And I would like to underline that it's not only the internet. It can be the telephone or even other types of technologies. And at least one relationship is mediated by technology, that between actors and audiences, or even between audience members. And some performances are participatory when they involve the audience. Aliveness is a very important element. The performance takes place now, so the spatial unity is no longer kept in such a performance, but the time element is still important. We are still together in the same time. And it relies on telepresence. However, telepresence is not only audiovisual. Telepresence was initially meant to describe telerobotics, so the control of a robot from a distance. So you can also imagine other types of control at a distance, so not only audiovisual telepresence. And telematic theater can actually be included in the category of cyborg theater, which was defined by Jennifer Parker Starbuck in 2011. And it's important that telematic technology is a subject technology, meaning that it asserts its own presence on stage, and without it, we wouldn't be able to hold the performance. And most examples of telematic performance, or telematic theater for that matter, could be included in a category of post-dramatic theater, meaning that they don't feature psychologized characters or a very coherent story and stage action. And actually that differentiates our performance, 2032 Smart Family, from the bigger strand of telematic theater. And I will offer an example of a post-dramatic performance that took place in 2018 in Germany, which I found extremely interesting, but nonetheless, it's quite different from what we did. So let's look a bit at a few slides.
Die Weltkugel war umrundet. Sie war vermessen, sie war von außen betrachtbar. Sie rotierte in einem elektronischen Filz, der sie wie eine zweite Atmosphäre umgab. Und ihre Geschichte war eine Geschichte der Vernichtung der Abstände.
Die gute Nachricht ist, du kannst von der Erde nicht herunterfallen!
Wie die Ameisen gruben die Menschen Kanäle querfeldein durchs Land. Und als sie dann die Schleusen öffneten, verbanden sich die einst getrennten Meere.
Okay, so it's interesting that in the parallel Welt, the characters were not driven by psychological motivations, and the aesthetic is very interesting. I recommend the performance in case you can find snippets of it online. So how do you differentiate between what we call theater, either dramatic or post-dramatic, and what we call performance art? Sometimes it's very hard to draw a clear distinction between them. But in my view, at least, and not only in my view, theater has an element of fictionalization. So it fictionalizes reality to a certain degree, and that's why it relies on theatricality, which is like a mask imposed onto reality. And it's also a qualified medium, meaning that it has attained a set of characteristics over time. So it has come to be defined in a certain way in a specific culture and even at a particular point in history. And that's why the boundaries of this qualified medium actually change all the time as our culture and our society also change. So I would say that all theater is performance, but not all performance is theater. And all actors are performers, but not all performers are actors. And I think this continuum that Michael Kirby proposed quite a long time ago is very useful in understanding some of the distinctions between performance and theater. So as we move from the left to the right, the degree of pretense increases. So if you are Marina Abramovic, you really run into a wall. You're yourself in a real situation. You're not pretending. That's performance art. But as you add more layers, like more masks, and create a character, then you move towards complex acting and towards the theater. So that's why you can't always distinguish between telematic theater and telematic performance. Sometimes you are somewhere in the middle of the axis. So I would also call telematic theater a post-human or a post-humanist theater. And post-humanism is a major philosophical current with many strands. I will just talk about Rosi Braidotti, and she proposes a critical post-humanism with two major components. One of them being post-humanism, which extends the category of the human, which was usually associated with a white, rich, and abled man. So now if we extend the category of the human, we also include women and marginalized others, not only women. And the other strand is post-anthropocentrism, which means that human is no longer in the center. And actually, I think telematic theater is post-human, meaning that the human shares the stage with the non-human, which attains almost equal agency in performance. If the connection drops, then you're dead in telematic theater. However, the human is still in the loop, at least as an audience, if not also as an actor. And I think that telematic theater has the potential of bringing to the fore marginalized people and realities by the power of connection, like we tried to do by connecting two countries affected by migration and bringing up the post-human figure of the migrant. And there are many ways of doing telematic theater because reality is always extended in telematic theater. It can be located in any of the points of mixed reality or mediality, meaning that you can have theater in virtual reality, or you can just have mediated reality like I did in most of the performances I worked on. I won't insist on all this theory, but I will offer an example of a performance that takes place in virtual reality, just so you can see a very different approach than what we did. Come on. Yeah, I think I have connection problem. Anyway, so this performance takes place. Ah, yeah, okay.
Maybe if we take out the video.
So what do you say? Are you ready to do something?
Okay, so just for you to have an idea of how this performance happened in a VR space. Okay, however, telematic started a long, long time ago. And these are some of the first technologies that telematic artists used. The telex, which was a primitive fax, the telephone, slow scan television, which was a form of primitive video conferencing, and the Minitel system. Okay. I won't go over all the examples I have prepared, but it's useful for you to understand that telematic performance and telematic theater is not something new. Like the first performance I identified, actually the first set of performances I identified come from the 1960s and from experiments associated with happenings, with the Fluxus events, with an organization called Experiments in Art and Technology, and also with expanded cinema. However, theater actually took on in 1993. And actually the first performance, theater performance happening on the internet is usually deemed Hamnet by Hamnet players. So this was a text-based performance. There were no visuals. It was just a chat environment. Later on, these chat environments diversified and people started creating in virtual worlds with graphic elements, like the one you saw previously, but that was an advanced reality, virtual reality of today. However, they started doing such performances at the beginning of the 1990s, so it's not something new. And video conferencing started to be incorporated in performance only around 1995, because the first video conferencing system was CU-CME. And yeah, that's when people started working with it. And actually one of the first performances I came across was created by an Italian called Francesco Verdinelli. So he did 2 telematic performances in 1996 and in 1997, linking a theater space in Rome with actors located in different countries who joined via video conferencing. In Romania, the history is not that old, let's say. So before the projects I was involved in, there were only 2 other projects happening. And only one of them had a hybrid approach, such as ours. And that involved children as performers. However, things really took off during the pandemic when lots of people started working on Zoom. And you can see like the list of Zoom performances that happened during that period. Maybe not all of them, but anyway, a very large selection of them. And nowadays, there are not institutions, let's say organizations. Few of them are supported by the state. Some of them are, some others are not. And some of them are Upstage, which is a platform, a virtual venue created by Helen Varley Jamieson and the Avatar Body Collision Group. And you can access it and see performances happening online and also in hybrid spaces, like linking theater spaces with the virtual world. Another important project is associated with La Mama Culture Hub in New York, and they have collaborations with the Seoul Institute of the Arts in South Korea. And they have created several telematic performances, not all of them theater, but anyway, they are a very important node of such telematic performance, also music and dance. Immersive telepresence in theater is a pedagogy project, so it focuses on training actors to work in a telepresence setting and in an international setting, and it takes place between the Coventry University in the UK and Tampere University in Finland. There are 2 very impressive examples. One of them is located in the north of Europe, and one of them in Canada, meaning that Nordic Center for Digital Presence and Telepresence Society have interconnected several venues. For example, in Norway, in Sweden, in Finland, so many theater venues and higher institutions have connected their spaces and hold regularly telematic performances. And in Canada, over 23, I think, 23 theaters and museums have also connected their venues, and they keep working on this kind of performance, theater, music, dance, and not only. Okay, so thank you very much. Okay, I shortened it a bit so that we can move on fast to the Q&A.
Yeah. Since Fiorella has another meeting 3:30, I suggest to start from questions related to roboetics and to Fiorella's contribution. If anyone wants to make a question, or even you can write the question in the chat if you prefer.
Just to add, I think the theater, as I said at the beginning, is very important to show people the effect of bias, of actions in general, you know. And virtual theater is even more interesting because there you can move human robots, and in Metaverso, you can also move many actors, characters, simulating in several areas, you know, the if and when and where, you know, as I said, you can have factual and counterfactual in many dimensions, in many branches. You know. You can see immediately, you know, the effect of your actions. Quite interesting. Thank you for your presentation, Marina. So I followed.
Thank you.
With great interest.
So if anyone has any question, please address them verbally or in the chat.
Or you can write me if you wish also to have more documents and material about roboetics. My email is in my slides. Otherwise, I will put it here for all the participants.
Well, I would like just to do a comment, and I think it's very interesting that theatre is now working on this type of themes and confronting himself with roboethic and with robotic and technology evolution, because theatre has always been a medium between two people to share ideas, to confront themselves, to expose a way of seeing the society. And this is a great opportunity. And I think also that the European dimension here is very important because in effect, it shows a telematic performance shows how the evolution, how the theatre evolution could be, but at the same time, how European questions like how caregivers or social themes like immigration and so on can be shown and lived through the theatre. During this process and during these years, we not only confront ourselves as partners, but also as publics and ways of working. And I think this is very, very important because telematic performance was not only a medium, so it was not only a Wi-Fi or connection question or how many screens we would have in scene, but how people really work in a telematic way and how the future could be for what concerns families, houses, architecture, and so on. And so I really think that this was a great opportunity to everyone. Besides the quality of the performance, the expertise of the directors we chose, and the qualities of the actors, of the cast, and the technicians we were involved, I think also for the public that came to see all the performances was a very, very interesting experience, because it was like traveling to Romania or from Romania to Italy without moving from their seat. It was not a VR experience, but it was absolutely a telematic experience. And this was one thought I wanted to share with you. And the other thought is that, in fact, and I think I will have to question myself for some choices we made during the project, our robot was white. the robot, which was white. And so maybe we'll have to ask ourselves some other questions for the next performance of the next experience we will do. We faced also lots of complexities concerning the robot construction. And during the project, we confront ourselves also with the Paolo Grasso Academy for concerns all the text and the stereotypes we were presenting in the text and so on. And it was a great opportunity to learn how different countries imagine the other country. We ask ourselves how these robots should be, which kind of functions and how it learn. But in fact, I don't remember when we decided that it should be white, for example. But it happened, and maybe it was a stereotype, and maybe it was a bias. And I'm a Black person. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Paola. In fact, it's a long discussion. I mean, it's a discussion about the educational importance of theater, whether theater is only creativity per se, or it has also educational effect. And I do think that it has an educational effect, if not on our creativity, that it's also an educational process. But thinking to what you said and Marina said, and I think that what you did with telematic theater was also some kind of simulation. And you think how simulation in real setting, that is an oxymoron in a sense, but you did a simulation about human-robot relationship with real characters, with real actors, that it's different. So what they felt, it was real, it was not simulated, although the situation was in a sense limited to the performance, but what the actors felt was real. So in this real simulation, again, an oxymoron, I think that you learned a lot. And I think that it's really important what you did. I will follow carefully your project now. Thank you so much. I have to go. And it was a pleasure.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, please.
Well, no, I can address it via email if you wish.
Okay.
But synthetic data, but I will ask. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We can share, question and answer to all the participants. I have no objections. And I would like to send you some materials about robotics in recent years. And ready to start an adventure with you whenever it's possible.
Thank you so much, Fiorella.
See you soon. Ciao.
Thank you, Fiorella. Ciao.
Grazie a tutti.
Prego, grazie a te tantissimo.
Ciao. Ciao.
We actually have a question in the chat by Alessandra. Thanks, Alessandra. I'm going to read it. So thank you. It was very interesting. Thank you to you, Alessandra. Well, I'm happy that was interesting. Are there any studies on the emotional impact of telematic performances on viewers? This is one question. The second one, are there differences in perception between in-person and online audiences? I think Marina can reply to these questions. Just to say, Alessandra, that we did an audience questionnaire as soon as that we gave to the audience as soon after the end of the performance. So we actually collected some data about the impact, if not specifically on the emotional impact of the performance, but surely more broadly on the impact that our performance had on our audience.
Yes, I can refer you to some studies. Only a few people have actually tackled this question. I wrote it in the chat. So the Digital Tempest was a performance that was telematic. It was created in the UK, and it linked to different spaces within the same city. And they had some questionnaires and I think some other methods as well, such as galvanic skin response, to study the impact on the audiences, the local audiences and the remote audiences. And these people did a comparison between watching the performance from the physical space or watching it online via live streaming. So I think that's a very interesting study that you can find online. They published, I think, 3 articles on this idea. There's also the book that we published in the previous project, which is called Telepresence and Migration, and you can find it for free. It's on the project website. And there I analyzed the audience response to the other telematic performance that we did in 2018, The Planet of Lost Dreams. And I compared the reactions coming from Spain and Romania. And of course, as Paola said, I'm working on the study analyzing the questionnaires coming from audiences in Romania and Italy, and that could also be useful for your question. And there's another person who works specifically on the question of emotion in telematic performance. She's called Sylvia Lane. She's a professor at Western University Center. So yeah, I think you can follow her research and see what she thinks about this topic. I hope that's a comprehensive answer.
Well, just I would like to add also that in this situation during the performance, there were very different kinds of audience. There were some families, for example, we here in Italy, we had Romanian families that were crossing exactly the experience of that were living the story that the project was presenting. So they were especially involved in the performance. So for them, it was not an experience of telematic performance only, it was a living experience. And because they find themselves also crossing this kind of experience, having their parents in Romania, and so communicating with them only through some devices. And so for them, for the things that they share after the performance, there was this kind of special interest in this kind of experience, not the performative part, but the story itself. For other kinds of audience, for example, the young people we host, because the performance was also presented to schools. So the young people, they share that this kind of experience was the way they would like to experience theatre performance in the near future. And they were more concerned about some characters like the young character of Nova, because they see themselves also as a video gamer in the future. So this was this kind of connection. For example, in fact, then the other people that we host here, technically, for what concerns the technical experience, they were very surprised about the robot to experience a performance with a robot. But for them, maybe the time of the performance was a little bit long. It was too long. It took too long, the performance. But on the other side, also that they felt themselves like someone that could live that kind of experience. So I think that for what concerns the public and the way the public experienced the performance, we have to analyze different situations, a technical one, a dramaturgical one, a performative one, a semiotic one, and so on. I think it's not only a question of how the audience experience. It's not, we are not doing the normal questions of a normal production. I think there are much more complexities.
Yeah, at the same time, I would argue that the reception of the on-stage performance is quite similar to that in traditional theater, at least in 2032 Smart Family. But it's interesting to see how audiences related to the remote action. And actually, yeah, we have some questions about that in the questionnaire, and I'm eager to share the results, but not now. Any other questions?
Yeah. If not questions, if you have some experience on dramatic theater that you want to share, or some comments or curiosities, please feel free to share.
Is anyone here studying telematic theater?
No, Alessandra say no. Have you ever seen a telematic performance?
Says Camila, who is the director in Italy of 2032 Smart Family. She has never seen a telematic performance.
No, actually was the answer to the previous question. Timing.
Hi, Camilla.
No, I wanted to say it was both webinars were very interesting. As you know, is a word that I don't know almost at all. It just was my first approach, but it's like discovering there is a world to discover apart from our performance. So thank you.
Thank you, Camila.
Do you have other project to collaborate with the Scuola di Robotica? Is a question to...
No, actually no. We read about Scuola di Robotica because of this project, as one of the action of the project was actually knowing more on robotics and all the ethical implementation and implication of robotics. And so we found that in Italy, actually, Fiorella, Operto, and Verugio are the key experts on the topic. So we started the collaboration when we started this project.
Very, very, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, just to conclude, we hope you will join us for the second webinar, because we have invited some of the team members, including Camila, including Miranda, to discuss about their experience of working on this performance, and you will find out more insights about how we managed to do this kind of performance, because it's very complicated. So I guess you'll enjoy learning about the process. Okay, thank you very much for joining us, and hope to see you next Monday.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.